Good evening, citizens. I'm Devoid. This is Rev Atheist, and welcome to Redacted, a live podcast where we talk about Star Citizen and its development.
And today we're going to talk about Pyro.
We
Uh,
are going to talk about Pyro.
yeah.
So,
So as it said in the little description, what are we going to say? I don't know.
yeah, so I just wanted to take today to talk about Pyro because uh, the jump gates, server meshing, it's all very big news right now. There was a video leaked a little bit earlier, Rev. I don't know if you've had a chance to see it. Somebody did leak footage of the jump gates
One of the new
working.
avocado dudes. Oh,
One of the new Evocati dudes.
yeah. Well, one thing I know
It's
is that the all of the notes indicated that it's placeholder graphics. So even if they
it
leaked it, it's
is.
like I'm not even really all
Yeah.
that
Yes.
thrilled.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like the textures aren't in right, and like there's a bug right now. I think it's a bug. They've got it on autopilot right now, so you don't like maneuver it yourself. You just go in, it goes through the autopilot. You get spit out the other end, right? So it kind of spins you around backwards as part of that autopilot, which is a little silly. Um, but I mean, it works, right? You went from server one in Stanton through the jump gate into server two Pyro seamlessly. It works, and it's cool to see nonetheless, right? And so that's big news. This is not the first Evo test that has been with server meshing Pyro Stanton, right? So, but it's big news, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about Pyro so we knew what we were getting into with the new system, as well as speculate in terms of what we can expect going into it. Right.
Yeah. And
So I'm
for the
gonna.
record, for the record, those of you listening, Devoid is way more into speculating than I am.
It's
So,
true. It's
but that's
true.
okay. That's
I
okay.
am.
We can do a little bit. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm also way more into lore, I think, than he is, at least in this game. So a lot of this is going to be me monologuing, right? But we're going to stop here and there to talk about what it means and what it might mean in the future.
Sure. Yep.
So Pyro, okay. Pyro is an unclaimed system. Consists of a K-type main sequence star, little red dwarf. Okay, it's a flare star, which is important.
A
There
dying star,
are
as I
it is
recall.
yes, it is a dying star. There's 5 terrestrial planets and a gas giant. It is kind of an older system, right, in terms of, when humans started traversing space. It was discovered in the year 2493 by a company called Pyrotechnic Amalgamated. Some of you might recognize that name because it is written on the stations in Pyro. It's written on Checkmate. It's written on Rune Station. It's for those of you who went to CitizenCon, they had little pins there for Pyrotechnic Amalgamated, right?
Yep.
That is the
And a little kit, right? Didn't they have like there was like a little kit?
little you're talking about these guys. The little yeah. Oh,
Oh,
oh, my sticker fell
you
out.
got
But
one?
yes, yeah, Cyber got one for me while he was there.
What a dick. Where's
But
mine, Cyber?
yeah, right there. But Pyrotechnic Amalgamated was a company that was formed as sort of a all or nothing sort of Hail Mary. It was a company that, gosh, what was his name? Pyrotech. I have it up somewhere, but this guy formed this company. He won big, and then started. He poured all of his money into this company in the hopes of finding new jump points and making it big with a new jump point. Right. The person who created this company actually retired before Pyro was discovered, but I'm not going to talk about that. I'm just going to breeze forward. 2493 was discovered. Okay. Um, the system was discovered by technically a ship called the Roustabout 30 years before it was actually found. Okay. This tanker ship was going out and about through the Kano system, detecting anomalies, trying to find jump points, as was the goal of this ship, right? Found an anomaly, but it didn't come back as anything super major, so they ignored it. 30 years later, the new CEO with new tech uh, built around finding these jump points decided to go over old, legacy data found this anomaly, said, "Oh, great, this might be something," went back and discovered the jump point. They were super ecstatic, and then they were super disappointed when they discovered that this jump point led to a highly unstable flare star, but they decided to go through it anyway. Okay. They pitched or they submitted the claim to the UNE, the United Nations of Earth, what it was at the time, and the UNE opted to uh, put the system into what they called their pilot program, which is a 10-year program to observe the star, see how it affects the planets, and see if terraforming would be a worthwhile endeavor. If it had been deemed a success, the UNE would have claimed the planet and begun terraforming or setting up stations or doing whatever the UNE did. But in 2499, the Hadrian system, I believe, was discovered, which sort of diverted the UNE's resources into terraforming, or it may have even been the Magnus system. I think it was the Magnus system because they started terraforming Magnus 2. Right, became a huge hub for shipbuilding for the UNE Navy, and so all of the resources went there. So this pilot program, this 10-year pilot program got cut short. They opted not to claim Pyro because it was just too unstable and not worth it. And this was further exacerbated by the discovery of the Terra system shortly after, because after they did Magnus, they jumped into Terra, right? So Pyro got abandoned pretty early, but Pyrotechnic Amalgamated didn't want to abandon it. They were essentially given rights to do what the fuck they wanted with it because UNE didn't claim it. And so they went in and they started scanning for valuable ores, which they found, right? And so for several years, a few decades actually, they were setting up mining stations, such as what is now known as Ruin Station, as well as Checkmate Station, around Monox, which is Pyro 2, the second terrestrial planet. And there was a pretty decent sized boom of mining, but it was pretty unsustainable because of the flares. So, long story short, after 60 years or so, Pyrotechnic Amalgamated ended up going bankrupt. They abandoned their stations, and Pyro fell under the control of various gangs. And so, for the last 300 years or so, that's where we've been, is with gangs holding control of Pyro. So that's where we're at, just as a sort of wide overarching history of Pyro. In terms of how this affects us as players, right, Rev? Because that's really what matters.
Yep, that's what matters.
That's really what matters. Pyro is going to be hostile, right? The solar flares span nearly the entire length of the system, reaching as far out as Pyro 5. Some
Yep.
hit the moons of Pyro 5. And just to kind of demonstrate just how far that is, okay, Stanton is a pretty small system. Stanton spans about 5 astronomical units. This is scaled down, of course, but compared to the actual solar system, but about 5 astronomical units. So if you could imagine the 60 million kilometer stretch from Microtech to its what is it? Like it's L6 Lagrange or whatever, L3 Lagrange.
Hmm.
Um, that's about 5 astronomical units. Okay, Pyro is about 2.5 times bigger, according to the last wiki entry. It's about 13 astronomical units.
Well,
To kind of
I remember, uh, I I broke the covenant and I went in. So, and I can tell you, it's pretty big.
yeah. Well, I mean that's fine.
The distances are definitely larger than
They
Stanton by a
are
good
right.
chunk.
So if you could imagine, you have a star, the Pyro star exists where Microtech is. The solar flares will stretch the entire length and then some of the entire Stanton system. So the flares are not small. Okay, and this is going to be something that we as players have to look out for. So very, very hostile system. Not sustainable for life, technically, although of the 6 planets, there is one that has a definitively breathable atmosphere. Did not require terraforming. It's pretty close to Earth size, so gravity is relatively similar. I mean, it's a little thin, but it is breathable, right?
And relatively close to the star.
Yeah, it's right in the green zone, so as far as temperatures go, solar flares aside, it's, fairly stable. It's just the solar flares really that are killing its ability to be inhabited long term or any kind of sustainable settlements, right? So, hostile in terms of environment, but also, right, we talked about it's now run by gangs.
Yep.
Pyro is a lawless space, okay? Stanton, comparatively, there are 4 planets, and each one is owned by a corporation. That's part of what they're named after, right? Microtech is owned by the Microtech company. Crusader is owned by Crusader Industries. Arc Corp is owned by, Arc Corp, and Hurston is owned by Hurston Dynamics. So these planets are owned by corporations and policed by corporations.
Yep.
Pyro is not owned by anybody, and the different regions within the system are going to be policed. I say policed by the gangs that are in control at the time.
Yeah, great. So let's pause here for a moment. Technically, I think technically, Pyro is under the UEE jurisdiction. However, I don't think they have any enforcement in the system. Um,
So Pyro on like all technical ledgers on everything is listed as unclaimed.
as unclaimed, so it's not under UEE jurisdiction
Unclaimed.
at all.
It is not under UEE
So,
jurisdiction
so
at all.
yeah, so that makes it a little more. So yeah, so the system will basically be policed by an amalgamate like just amalgam's not the word, but by an assortment of gangs who've claimed various stations, various planets, various areas
Mhm.
in the system. Um, in the same way that like the UEE security would, but they're dicks, right? They're pirates, they're thieves, they're murderers, as opposed to being actual, you know, law upkeeping folk. So
Right.
that'll be an interesting dynamic. I think so. Just to take a pause here, uh, I think that makes Pyro or will make Pyro a little um, scary for folks who are not looking for like a strong PvP type of experience.
Well,
And personally, I'm a little concerned at just how bad it might get in Pyro with regard to people who want to just go there and watch the world burn.
so I hear what you're saying, right? But it's supposed to be scary and it's supposed to be a shitty experience. It is not going to be a system you go to chillax, right? Um, I talked about how Pyrotechnic Amalgamated made a lot of their early money in mining the dangerous nodes, primarily on Pyro 2, Monox, right?
Yep.
You might know it as Monox. Pyro 2 is going to be that sort of uh, red planet, that bright red kind of deserty planet, lots of cool rock formations and some plant life, some vegetation down there.
So maybe
Um,
like the Mars of Pyro.
kind of. It does have an atmosphere, not breathable, but it has an atmosphere. And there's some yeah, native vegetation, liquid seas, right? Like there's flowing water. But there was lots of valuable material at the surface level. Um, with that, right, I feel like Pyro is going to be 2 things. One of the exciting things about Pyro is that it is a sort of hub. There are 6 jump gates in Pyro to various systems, Terra being one of them, which is kind of a big deal because Terra is sort of the center of UEE space, right? So, with that consideration, it is going to be a quick but dangerous trading route. It's gonna be one of those ones where if somebody wants to take risk for a big payday, they might travel through Pyro in the hopes that they don't get pirated. So it's going to be valuable to be there for that reason, for pirates. I think it's also going to be valuable in the sense of if you can get to Pyro 2 or the Akiro cluster, which is a group of asteroids that sits around Pyro 2, and you can give it any kind of extended time frame or you get lucky, I think that there's lots of valuable ore still to be had in that planetary system. And so
Mhm.
it's gonna be one of those, very volatile, very dangerous, but, high reward situations where, "Holy cow, I just hit it big here. Here's the jackpot. Let's mine it up and get the fuck out of here and make a lot of money," right? So there's gotta be balance to it. It's not going to be fun for new players or players who are looking to avoid PvP, but for those who are willing to take that risk, I see the payouts being considerably higher.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, all I'm looking for, right? Uh, because we plan to homestead there, right? There's
Correct, yeah.
no secret. We're the Pyro freelancer core. We're planning on homesteading Pyro. Um, is that I mean, I'm not a great PvP player, but I know I'm going to be spending a lot of time there. So, ho- all I'm personally really looking for, I mean, the danger, fine. NPC aggression, awesome. Um, I don't know. Players are people. People are dicks. I don't like people. It's just the people that
People are dicks.
are that are will be coming into that system knowing full well that that they, or at least believing that they can get away with just about anything. I'm hoping that there are systems and some organic means in place to kind of mitigate that. Like even if it
So,
even
there
if
there
it's
kinda
just
is.
well, even if it's just like the NPC faction saying, "Hey, whoa, you're out here, being a dick in our space. We're the dicks here, not you." That'd be
So,
cool.
I think that will be part of it, right? So, something to there's 2 things that I'm gonna basically counter that with, right? The first is gonna play to exactly what you said. The jump gate is under the control of one of the gangs of Pyro, and that's Xenothreat. Xenothreat controls Ruin Station. As far as I know, they also control the jump gate. And I think you're exactly right. If you're parked at the jump gate and you're shooting people as they come in and out, you, in theory, would be taking from Xenothreat's ability to make money off of those people. If you're pirating them, Xenothreat isn't, and they don't like that, right? You're cutting into their profits at this point. So I don't think it's outside the realm of plausibility for the Xenothreat gang to start getting pissed off at you if you were to start doing things like camping the jump gate. But even if people do consistently camp the jump gate, and they probably will, there's another sort of defense put in place in that the jump gate is going to spit you out at random places, roughly 50 kilometers across on the other end of that jump gate. At least that's how it seems so far based on Evocati reports, right? There's not one spot that it spits you out. It's random, and it's fairly widespread. So in theory, I mean, yes, you could get unlucky and just plop right into somebody's mantis fucking little bubble, and it's a bad day for you. But the chances of that happening are significantly lower because it is spread out, which means that more often than not, you're probably gonna get away unscathed as long as you keep your head on a swivel and are quick about it, right?
Hmm.
The entire point of Pyro is that no matter what, there's always gonna be a little bit of risk. And so I'm okay with the fact that there may just be times that it's unavoidable that you get shot at or pirated or whatever.
Sure. So I will talk a moment about some things that I'm kind of looking forward to, honestly. So when we're talking about the hostile environment, like we're talking about the flares, the hostile planets, I mean, that I'm actually kind of looking forward to, right? Having to figure out ways to mitigate our settlement and protect our settlement from the flares and from uh, just just the hostility of the system itself. I think there's a lot of opportunity for some interesting gameplay there, and I'm definitely interested to see how that'll flesh itself out.
So I actually can speak on that, right? Let's talk a little bit more about the history of Pyro. Okay, I mentioned that they were going on for about 60 years before Pyrotechnic Amalgamated really started to go bankrupt, right? So if we 2493 is when the system was officially discovered. The first Tavaran War started in 2541. Okay, and this is important for this. It ended in 2546. Okay, the end of the first Tavaran War is where we first started to see improvements in shield technology because the Tavaran have fantastic shields on the ships, and after we beat the shit out of them, we got access to that technology, which should play pretty heavily into traversing and settling in Pyro. Um, so, improvements in I'm just reading here off of Galactopedia. Improvements in shielding technology allowed the few companies that remained in the system to extend their operations to previously unreachable areas, but also increased the presence of outlaws as they too gained access to this tech. So it seems that the Tavaran shields specifically have a pretty good resistance to this. And we should be able to use that tech for things like bubble shields for our settlements.
Hmm.
While it's not gonna be just a wall against it, right? There's gonna be some substantial protection there. I imagine at the cost of substantial upkeep, but defendable nonetheless.
Yeah. So the the tests that they did where they let players go into the Pyro system, uh, I was a little surprised, honestly, to find that in that test, the flares on Pyro 3 Bloom didn't really seem to be all that big a deal because there are some settlements there. I found a settlement. I went and I was like exploring the settlement, and the flare came up and it was pummeling the crap out of everything. I mean, it definitely had impact. Don't get me wrong, right? So there was a constant alarm, constant warning. I think it absolutely screwed with communications and electronics and all kinds of things. But it didn't feel dangerous necessarily. It didn't feel like, oh, now there's this massive UV, bombardment. You have to get out. You have to get out of it because you're taking damage if you don't get out of the elements. Um, I honestly I was expecting a little more, along those lines.
Well, let's take that and segue into the next segment, okay? We're talking things like solar flares and just what kind of damage they do. It's not surprising to me that it wasn't an instant fuck you, right? Because there's so many different types of radiation that you're being pummeled with, and that's gonna be the real danger, right? You're not gonna necessarily get burned alive. I mean, it's gonna burn you, it's gonna hurt, right? But there is a gang, one of the 5 main ones in Pyro, called the Fire Rats. Are you familiar with them, Rev?
As I recall, the Fire Rats were a gang that was created on a Star Citizen Live.
No. Um, maybe, maybe. I don't think so, but
I think I saw the episode,
well, maybe they were, okay? Maybe they were,
but
but the
vaguely, vaguely.
That's okay. The Fire Rats are one of the gangs in Pyro. They originated in 2563. What they were was they were a group of workers for Pyrotechnic Amalgamated that were left there after the company went bankrupt and left, right? They started living out of their old barracks, and their sort of, I'm gonna use the word religion, started when a solar flare hit and knocked a cargo ship out of the sky, and basically gave them a whole bunch of supplies to continue to live off of. And so they started essentially worshiping the star, and they would stand out in solar flares and basically get burned by them and just let them do their thing, right? And so knowing this about the fire rats, it's not surprising to me that the solar flares are just like lashing the planet with this horrible, energy. Like, yeah, temperatures are gonna be a little bit unpredictable. Radiation is gonna be, off the charts, but it's not just gonna instantly kill you. So I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Anyway, I found the episode. They absolutely were. Star
Just
Citizen
randomly
Live.
created on a Star Citizen Live?
They
That's cool.
they
Okay.
are, yeah.
That is
Anyway,
pretty cool.
you can watch that
We
video
can
later.
we can link that video. Yeah, we can link that video. But anyway, we're talking, about the fire rats and gangs, so let's talk about some of the other gangs, okay?
Sure. Yeah.
As far as I know it, there are 5 major gangs in Pyro. There's probably gonna be a bunch of smaller ones, but there's 5 fairly big ones that I know of, fire rats being one of them. They're gonna live primarily on Pyro 3. Then there are the Drop Kings, which I've got them here. They were, uh, founded around the same time, but something that you have to remember is in the 27th century, we're talking height of the Messer regime, okay?
Hmm.
And we could talk about the Messer regime another time, but uh, he was basically an extremist imperator, uh, cruel kind of tyrant ruler, and so people fleeing UNE space was not uncommon. And the Drop Kings were one of these anti-Messer activists who fled under threat of whatever from the Messers, and they were basically smugglers, right, when they first started, and they started moving goods as well as people to and from Banu space, and then eventually made their way through the, Pyro system because of its connection to Terra, right? Uh They started butting heads with the headhunters. They had Ruin Station for a little bit. Um, for the most part, they continued moving people out of Messer space into Banu space, but they had to pay for these things somehow, so they got into gun running and drug running and etc. They're not hugely in Pyro anymore, at least not nearly as much as they were, but they're still a pretty important part of the history, and they can still be found. So there's the Drop Kings, right? Speaking of the headhunters, they're gonna be the next one. These are gonna be one of the biggest groups in Pyro. They are one of the earlier groups, rose in the 2610s. Um, they were smugglers first and foremost, moving, things between Terra and Nyx, or Terra and Virgil through Pyro and Nyx. Um, and, they are probably the group that has had the most time in Ruin Station. I know that people right now see Ruin Station, the think Xeno threat. Well, the headhunters for the past several centuries have had it more often and more consistently than any other group. So they're a pretty big deal. They have pulled back in the last century, because they are dealing with, other issues in other systems, which is why Xenothreat was able to rise to prominence the way they did. But headhunters are still a huge group in Pyro, and they have every intention of taking Ruin Station back and establishing themselves as the premier gang in Pyro. We've got beyond that the Rough and Ready gang, which if you can think, I know some people might be familiar with like the Fuel Rats, which is an org that moved here from Elite Dangerous, and they go around refueling people. Rough and Ready works fairly similarly. They got their start by hitting the refueling stations around the system and basically coveting the fuel and charging a shit ton for it. And so they currently hold Checkmate Station. So that's going to be one of the main spots besides Ruin where you're going to go and repair and refuel and such. But you're going to pay a shit ton for it.
Yeah.
The plus side is
I was
go
just
ahead,
going to
go
say,
ahead.
I find it interesting that Rough and Ready shares like uh, acronyms with rest and relax stations. R&R,
Yeah,
R&R. I wonder if that, and
yeah.
I wonder if that's on purpose.
I think it is, right? So I'm reading the, Galactic here. It says, "They conducted a series of meticulously planned raids on multiple refueling stations, taking them over and establishing themselves as the off-market version of Rest and Relax."
Nice.
So I think it was on purpose that they used the R&R, right? Um, the cool thing about it, though, is if you've got a good re it seems, at least according to read to this, if you've got a good relationship, a good business relationship with the Rough and Ready gang, they will protect you while you're in their space. So Checkmate Station is probably going to be as close to an armistice zone as we get in Pyro. Whereas if you pull up to checkmate and you start pissing people off, Rough and Ready's not going to stand for that.
Yeah, yeah.
You come to yeah,
Assuming you've got the positive reputation with that faction.
yeah, or if you conduct enough business, right? I think this is going to be one of those uh, uh, unique instances of reputation where I think if you spend money with them, that's going to be a direct influence on like they're going to like you more, right?
Yeah, could be.
Um, because here it says while they charge high prices, the protection they offer to those using their stations is considered worth the price. So it seems like they take this pretty seriously. So Rough and Ready might be worth being friends with, especially if you're not keen on fucking around with Xenothreat. So one, two, we talked Fire Rats, Drop Kings, Headhunters, Rough and Ready. That leaves us with Xenothreat. Xenothreat, origins for Xenothreat are a little bit unclear, but it's believed that these were Messer era soldiers who, during after the fall of the Messers, basically got the fuck out of Dodge, found themselves in Pyro, and just started doing what they could to take over. Right, being Messer era, these guys are pretty hardcore in terms of their methods. They're not afraid to get their hands dirty with innocence, so to speak. So they're hardcore anti-alien. They, I mean, they shoot to kill. Right, they don't fuck around. If you're in their way, you're a problem, and they'll deal with you. And they're currently holding Ruin Station, which is going to be the premier station in Pyro. So they are sort of the de facto leaders of the system.
And they are known to man some pretty big firepower.
Yes, they do indeed. So it says here most of its criminal activity was concentrated in Pyro until 2949, when systems connected to Pyro, such as Satan and Terra, began to report on raids led by the members of Xenothreat. This is going to be a reference to the Xenothreat events that we've had in game, where we go to Jericho Station and have to fight them off against the Dark Idris. So
Yep, and that
the
happened
Yep,
2951.
2951. Yes. So that's gonna be the gangs of Pyro. We're gonna have to pick and choose, I think, as players who we side with and how, because I think once we start siding with one gang, it's going to be very difficult to traverse space in other parts of the system,
That's true.
right?
Yeah, that'll certainly be interesting as far as deciding who, yeah, like where you choose to do business, who you choose to associate yourself with, and what reputation you get. Because I think you're
Hmm.
right. If you, once you start making a choice as to who to build reputation with, you will necessarily be
Lose
losing
reputation with
reputation
somebody. Yes.
with some of their rivals.
Yeah. Now, one thing I am curious about is Pyro's almost divided in half in terms of like planets. Pyro 1, 2, and 3 are all very close to the star. You've got this small green zone, and you got Pyro 1, which is kind of this burnt rock planet. It's a coreless planet, so it's literally just a rock, right? You got Pyro 2, which is just on the inside of the green band, and then Pyro 3, which is about halfway through the green band, but they're all very, very close to the star. Okay. Pyro 4, you got to jump way the fuck out before you get to Pyro 4, and then it's 4, 5, 6, right? So this is sort of divided. And something important I think to consider is Checkmate Station, which is going to be where the headhunters are. They are around Pyro 2, Monox. So they're right there, right by the star. Okay. Ruin Station is around Terminus, which is Pyro 6. So they are way, way out there. So there's a significant distance gap, right? And given that Checkmate Station is around what could be considered like the two more habitable planets, I'm curious to see what Pyro 6 has to offer aside from Ruin Station that's going to lure people out there and get people to side with Xenothreat and build that reputation. Because based on what I know, right, it seems like Headhunters is a no brainer.
Well, I mean,
Rough and Ready is a no brainer with them having that close proximity to Pyro 2, where the Akira cluster is, where all those mining opportunities are going to be in Pyro 3, where the habitable atmosphere and planet is.
correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Ruin Station the station that's near the Pyro Stanton jump gate?
Complete opposite side of the system.
Oh.
you've got the Pyro jump gate, and then you have to jump halfway across the system to get to the star, and you got Pyro 1, 2, and 3, and then you jump to the opposite side, and that's where Ruin Station is. It is literally almost as far as you can get, at least according to the star map, which admittedly is outdated. Although Rev, I'm gonna watch this video real quick that, got posted in the pipeline of the jump because he opens up his star map for just, like, a brief second. So let me see what I can find for us. Okay, yep, open that up. Okay, I've actually got it up right now.
You want me to switch?
Um, yeah, let me, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna share my screen real quick. We weren't planning on doing this, so I apologize. But let's do
Yeah,
this.
just say when.
Screen, we're gonna go screen 1. Okay, go ahead.
There you go.
Okay, so here's what we're looking at. So in the top right here, I don't know if you can see my mouse or not. Can you?
Yep, I can see.
Okay, that's the Pyro Stanton jump point. Okay, this is Pyro 6. This is where Ruin Station is gonna be, so I guess it's not all the way across. The Arc star map is showing the jump point is way over here, down in oh, I didn't do that. Down over here in the bottom left corner, whereas Pyro 6 was up here in the top right corner. So I guess it's not as far as I thought. This is probably going to be as far as jumping from, like, Microtech to Arc Corp would be this jump point to Ruin Station.
Yeah, it's gonna be a ways, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So, but it's definitely not right by.
Got it. All right.
So, but that's what we're looking at.
Oof. All right.
So, yeah, I just am curious to see what's going to draw us out there
Yeah, there's
to
bound to
the
be something
fringes
on
of Pyro.
Terminus out
There
there.
has to be, right? So
Yeah, it's got a name.
Terminus Terminus is also the only planet we've actually not seen any footage or art of. In CitizenCon, that when they did the Pyro demo, we saw 1 through 5, and then we saw one of the moons of Pyro 5. We have not seen any footage or images of Pyro 6. So that's interesting.
Certainly
I'm
is.
I'm sure that there's gonna be a big surprise there for Pyro 6. There's probably something really, really cool. I would refer to the Arc star map for some information on it, except that the Arc
Like the
star
lava
map
falls.
has
They're gonna have lava falls.
well, that's the thing, is that the information on the star map has changed so drastically. Pyro 3 used to be a pure lava planet with lava rivers flowing over lava. Like, it was just, like, bad because a planetary body was suspected to have collided with it at some point, and that planetary body was suspected to be Pyro 4 because it looked like Pyro 4 was getting knocked way out into Pyro 5's orbit, right? Um, as far as I know, I think that is still true, is that Pyro 4 and 5 are on course to collide at some point, but being, Pyro 4 having hit Pyro 3 and turned it into a liquid molten rock has obviously changed. Pyro 1, is not so much a gray, desolate nothingness anymore. It's kind of blue and crystalline. It's still burned and it's still really, really hot. There are a couple of settlements on there, so it's not quite matching the description. Um, Pyro 2 is different than the star map. I mean, the whole system has been updated. So I don't really trust anything the star map has to say on Pyro 6, but it's got to be something to draw people out there compared to those inner planets,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
So that's my own speculation on that topic. Rev, knowing what you know, which admittedly isn't a lot, but knowing what you know, which game do you think you see yourself siding with if you had to pick one? Because it sounds like you might have to.
Yeah. So I don't see myself doing, I don't know, the gang, whatever a gang is you know more centralized on Bloom and the Pyro Stanton jump point. That's probably the main ones that I'll be concerned with, so that I can get back and forth to that system, especially early on when they're the only two systems, right? Being able to, obviously I'm going to want to be able to get through that jump gate without a whole lot of hassle. And then I just don't want to have a lot of hassle being on the planet where we live, right? So those are the ones, right? So I guess that's probably going to be the headhunters, and
Fire rats on Pyro 3 mostly. And then Xenothreat, I think, by the Pyro Stanton jump
well,
point.
then I guess those are going to be the two that I care most about not pissing off.
Now, here's a try this on for size, right? Nyx, as most people know, is going to be the third system to come out. It is being worked on in tandem. It has been worked on for years. It seems to be in a pretty good spot as far as we can tell, which we don't have a lot of news on, but should be in a good spot. There's people expecting it roughly a year or so following Pyro. So let's just imagine this, okay? Let's say that Xenothreat is essentially controlling the Pyro Stanton jump point. Now, what if the headhunters are controlling that Pyro Nyx jump point? How do you see that playing out?
The
For
Pyro Nyx jump point. So there's no jump point from Stanton to Nyx, right?
I don't believe so. No, Stanton has Magnus and
Terra,
Terra and Pyro.
right? But okay, yeah, I don't know. I don't know, man. I'm just I'm trusting the devs to make it work.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I'm just throwing it out there as a maybe, right? Yeah. So, man, gangs. I've done in the subscriber vault recently. There was sort of a little piece on headhunters, and they seem kind of cool, right? They're definitely kind of violent, but they're also the type where like if they make you a promise, they'll keep it. You know, they've got a little bit of honor to them. I mean, that works both way, right? If they make you a promise to cut your head off, they're gonna keep that one too. But, you know, if they make you a promise to help you or whatever, then they're gonna keep that. And so I think that, a positive reputation with them might go a long way. Um, I think the fire rats are gonna be weird, man. I think the fire rats are gonna be weird. Um, beyond those 2, I guess my next choice would be, I guess, working down, right, is Rough and Ready because it seems like they might be the controlling interest in fuel, which is gonna be a big fucking deal.
Yeah, yeah. So that makes me want to make a quick shift to talk a little bit about resource management in Pyro,
Let's do it.
right? So yeah, so Rough and Ready may be the primary fueling source in Pyro, but I believe the intention is, my understanding of the intention is that even if that's true, fuel is going to be still hard to come by. It's going to be expensive as crap. Um, so uh, one of the things that I think people have been looking forward to is like the opportunity to grab their what do they call it, the it's not the Genesis, it's what
The Gemini.
the Gemini. Thank you. To grab their Gemini, load that sucker full of fuel, bump out to Pyro and sell fuel, and if not just be the good guy to help people when they need it, then maybe to make some money in the process. I am interested to see what other similar gameplay loops there are with regard to bringing resources that are scarce into Pyro. What resources are going to be scarce in Pyro? Because ultimately there has to be something in Pyro worth going to get, or else people wouldn't be there, right? So there's
Right.
so there's minables, there's collectibles, there's something there that's going to make people want to go to Pyro to do the collecting and to take it out elsewhere. Um, but what exactly is it that's scarce, right? Other than fuel, which I think we know is going to be scarce. What else is out there? What's going to be needed, right?
Aegis, you're saying isn't Pyro supposed to be Quantanium rich? Quantanium specifically, we don't know, right? We know that Pyro was initially settled because it had lots of veins of valuable materials. That's all we know.
Yeah, it could be gold. It could be crystal resources like hedanite,
Yeah, like
laranite. You
Hadanite.
know, don't know.
Yeah,
It could be gases. You're right. I mean, there hasn't been a whole lot about collecting gases. Like, what's that about? It seems like an untapped market, right? To
yeah.
collect
Mike,
gases at various places. In
Mike says Pyro is supposed to be stripped. Pyro is stripped on the surface, right? It's difficult to get further below the surface because it requires time, which is difficult to give because of the solar flares. You can't really have a prolonged mining operation to get deep into the crust because the flares were doing things like destroying um, barracks and equipment, etc. Right? So yeah, what's fairly easily accessible from the surface all got stripped out. That's part of why the such a wide expanse of the surface was stripped so quickly is because they couldn't go very deep. They basically the land, get what they could get, and then get away before the flares ate their shit. So I have no doubt that if there's a way to set up a more effective localized mining situation, that if you could get deeper, you're probably going to find some pretty good clusters of valuable materials deeper down. That's what I think. Obviously, we don't know, but just like Rev was saying about 5 minutes ago, there has to be something valuable in Pyro worth staying there for, and I think that's going to be it, primarily.
Yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible that the value in Pyro is the lack of law. Is the ability to have a place for these lawless factions to exist without having a bunch of UEE oversight. That may be the major draw to Pyro. And I'm kind of okay with that, I guess. But that just, in my mind, makes a pretty shallow gameplay experience. And I'm hoping that that's not the case. I'm hoping that there's more to it than that.
Well, another part of the value to Pyro, as mentioned in the very, very beginning, right, is the fact that there are 6 jump points that
Sure.
connect to it,
Yeah,
right?
major
So it's
major
it's
travel hub. That's true.
major travel hub, right? Um, but I mean, yeah, there has to be a reason to stay in Pyro, which is like the whole thing. Because yeah, you can go to Pyro, hop to a gate, and keep going, right? And it's like, oh, I just saved fucking 10 hours of travel time, like great, but there's got to be stuff to keep you there. In terms of the player facing experience, aside from money, let's talk just a little bit about missions in Pyro. As
Missions.
some
Yeah.
of you may know, yeah, some of you may know, the mission content team has been hard at work to produce missions with such depth that we have yet to see in the game. We're talking, you actually have to land on the planet, talk to people, bespoke dialogue for these missions, um, multi-part missions that aren't as easy as neutralize target. We're talking you have to go and they described one where it's basically like an investigation mission where you have to go to this location and find a clue that's going to take you to the next point where you're going to go and search around and find another clue that's going to drive you to the next point. And it's this narrative driven mission. And that's the kind of thing that they want you also doing in Pyro. And so in terms of keeping you in Pyro, that's going to be part of it too. Um,
Yeah. So I want to talk about missions, right? So some
yeah,
hopes
let's do
hopes
it.
that I have for missions, right? Um, in so many games, missions are you go and get the mission from a person, you go do some stuff, you come back, mission complete. So
Right.
boring, so lacking in depth, right?
Please go collect flowers.
Right. Hey, I need this resource. Go get it. You go get it, you come back, right? My hope is that they find an interesting way to do things like you go and you find somebody, and they do have a need. Some, right? They need you. Maybe it's a retrieval mission, right? So just it's a simple retrieval mission. But the thing that you need to get isn't readily available. And the only way you can get it is by doing other missions, right? So that you get this kind of stacking effect where, like, yeah, I need to go get this thing, but in order to do that, I have to build up this reputation over here. And to do that, I have to do missions here. But then, even still, once that's done, to get the specific thing I need here, I need to exchange it with the thing that I got from this mission. You know what I'm saying? To create
So
some
I do,
depth.
and I'm going to say something that you're not going to like.
Yeah.
RuneScape has a mission or a quest system that I think was ahead of its time, and the tech that built RuneScape was not ready for it. The RuneScape quest system is very expansive and in depth and requires a lot of those things where you have to have prior mission completions or certain skills or whatever to unlock them. And there's also like these multiple stages to them. And um, I'm thinking of like the desert treasure one where you had to go across basically the entire map and do little mini missions to acquire these different crystals, and then you had to put them together, and then you had to like go to the pyramid and get this magic book. And it was great, right? I just hate the way RuneScape plays, so it wasn't engaging to me, right? But if you take that same philosophy and put it in a game like Star Citizen, I think we can get something really, really great, which is sort of what you're describing.
Yeah. So yeah, for me, it's the engaging gameplay, right? The engaging story for me will really be about having missions that are multidimensional, right? That they're not super linear. They're not one for one exchange of effort for reward or you know what I'm saying? So
Right. No, I'm with you. I'm with you, right?
hey, we got another
And I
follower.
thank you, Haru. Appreciate that. What I hope to see, and with, I mean, I spent a lot of time with the boys today talking about Tony Zervek, right? Because we're talking about Pyro and server meshing and everything that's happening right now with Tony Zervek's Quanta system. I think that beyond just dynamic events, I hope to see dynamic missions the same way, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's
Whereas
that's 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 a planned part
the
of it.
yeah, the happenings of the world and the universe around you affect what missions can be done, right? Whereas, kind of like you're describing, let's say we're in Pyro, right? And Rough and Ready being the premier fuel um, suppliers of the system, maybe they are running low on fuel because there was an influx of travelers and uh, a shortage of fuel coming in. So they're like, "Holy cow, we have all of this need but no supply." Suddenly, you're popped up if you've got good reputation. You may say, "Hey, Rough and Ready needs fuel at checkmate station or whatever." Or if you're there, maybe you talk to somebody, they pop up on your mobile device, "Hey, I need to talk to you." You go and talk to them and say, "Hey, look, we've got a situation." Suddenly you're tasked with getting fuel here by any means necessary, right? This opens up a mission where it's not going to guide you to checkpoint A to checkpoint B to checkpoint C. It says, we need fuel, come up with it. And you as a player get to choose how you do that. Are you going to go pirate fuel from somebody? Are you going to smuggle fuel in from a system where you can just go buy some,
You're gonna go
right?
refine it for yourself and
Are
bring
you
it
gonna
in.
go mine Quantanium and make it? Right, yeah. So I'm excited for that kind of mission where they leave it open-ended and leave you to
100%.
figure out the how. I'm so
100%.
excited for
Yeah,
that.
so that was another thing I was gonna talk about is this idea that especially when the quantum system comes into play and they bring it out in earnest, this idea that supply and demand, this need in versus availability, will be ingrained to such a degree that the quest that these jobs aren't even necessarily needed. It's just that you can, bring up, the market and say, holy crap, fuel or quantanium or this mineable resource is really valuable at such and such location right now. I- I'm going to go mine before somebody else does it. And I'm going to get this piece of the action before the prices drop. You know,
Exactly,
I'm very much
exactly.
looking forward to that that aspect of the gameplay, where you can maybe it's buying and selling something, some manufactured good from one system to the other. Maybe it's, I mean, I don't know, I don't know.
I will say we've gotten a taste of this already, right? Because if you recall, during like Invictus launch week, they sort of synthesized this by upping the price of things like fireworks and audiovisual equipment. Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be it'll be cool to see that happen dynamically instead of
Oh yeah, that was
manually.
that was, what did they call that? That was like a what did they call it? Whatever. I remember. I remember.
Yeah, yeah, but they upped the prices of a couple of commodities that make sense that it would have been used for that type of celebration. They're putting off a lot of fireworks because every time the freaking Bengal would fly by, they do the fireworks, right?
Yeah, so you
So, oh,
go
we're
fight.
using a lot of fireworks, so you could sell fireworks for a lot of money because high demand. And then audio visual equipment because they're trying to put on the show and shit and play music for people, right? So, but to see that happen dynamically is going to be very, very cool. And to be able to actually use those commodity price alerts depending on where you're at and be like, oh, okay, what are people paying for aluminum in Stanton right now? Holy shit, Hurston Dynamics is paying how much for this shit?
Or,
Oh, okay.
or to be able to set your own price alerts on resources that you are particularly good at obtaining,
Exactly right.
right? So
Exactly
that
right.
then you can tailor those things to the things you already like to do. Like, oh, my prices just went up over there. Oh, availability is high over here. Oh, oh,
And then
I'm looking for mineable nodes. So you're watching the the data networks for
mhm.
for
and
nodes that
then
locations that you could purchase from data runners.
and to bring this all back to Pyro, right? When you do things like that and you say, "Oh, M- Magnus system is low on iron," huh? But I got to get. I'm in Stanton or wherever. I think there's a Magnus jump point in Stanton, but you get what I'm saying, right? Or I'm in Nix. Okay, I'm in Nix. Magnus needs fucking iron. I can jump 8 to 10 systems and go around, or I can jump three and go through Pyro. Hmm. You know, it's one of those things that you're gonna have to think about, and as a player, you get to make that decision. Am I gonna take the risk to go through Pyro or not?
Yeah, yeah, because even if you come out of the private or a jump gate in a random location and it's relatively safe, it's a really tiny, small place for you to go into the jump gate.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. If you're in Pyro, you got to get out of Pyro. Now there's 6 jump gates that might be blockaded from this side. So you're very right. So
Yep.
Pyro's exciting. Pyro is very exciting. If you guys haven't seen Pyro, I'm sure there's tons of videos up. But we did just get successful jumps between Stanton and Pyro seamlessly. There's a video going around on Pipeline. It's pretty cool. We're looking to see if that guy gets booted out of Evocati because his name is plain and clear to see right there on the screen. He's got his QR code up and everything.
Ah.
But yeah, it's silly. Rev, you should watch it. We've got it up in the Pixel Clips chat. Um,
Wow.
yeah.
They even
Uh,
specifically said you can talk about all you want, but no video, no screenshots. Still
yes.
NDA. It's like, ah, you dummies.
Yes. Yes.
That'll be his
Um,
last view of Pyro as an Evocati.
yeah, yeah. Phaedron bookmarked his account on because he wants to go back and check. Is he getting kicked out yet? Is it kicked out yet?
That's funny.
Yeah, but Pyro, that's pretty much it. There's gonna be tons of derelict. Oh, one last thing that's not really about lore. There's also been one thing. I'm just gonna throw this out there. I think we're also gonna get base building tier at least tier 0 or tier 1 with Pyro. That's what I think. Just throwing that out there.
What do you think the odds are of a surprise second system released with Pyro?
Slim, pretty
0?
slim. No, but close.
Yeah. All right. I think
Yeah.
slim also. I'm not predicting that at all. But I think that, like you said, they have been working on Nyx, right? They've got. I don't remember what the name of the planet was, but the one that was in Stanton that they moved back to
Um,
Nyx,
Delamar,
Delamar,
the
right?
asteroid,
Right.
huge asteroid. Yep.
So I mean,
with Levski on it.
with Levski on it. Yeah, so I mean, that would be interesting, super interesting if all of a sudden it's like, yeah, you got Pyro. Oh, hey, guess by the way, we've got this other system that didn't require near as much work as Pyro, and we're able to give you that also because we're able to release it, and we've been working on it in secret. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, when Nyx is closer, we'll have to do a lore segment on it. And admittedly, this one wasn't very well structured, but we'll have to do a segment on Nyx, and we'll talk about Anthony Tanaka and the
Yeah, we'll
kind of
need to get
people
somebody else in
inhabiting.
here to help
Yeah,
talk to you about lore because I am not an engaging lore discusser.
that's
Uh,
okay. That's okay. I admit I was less prepared than I thought I was. I was like, oh yeah, pyro lore. I know this stuff. And then I was like, wait, now that I'm on the spot, maybe I don't recall as much as I thought I did. But
yeah, well, plus
no,
regurgitating a bunch of lore is less engaging than you think it can be. Whatever. We'll figure it out. And this has been a good episode. We've been talking about some fun things. So don't I'm not shitting on our
no, yeah,
guests
it
here. We're
was. It
good.
was. I mean, we talked about what to expect, which is really what everybody's talking about right now. So
Yep.
I'm very excited. PFC is. I mean, we've been waiting for this since our inception. So very very excited to make the journey home. So, I think that's all I have to say on the subject today. Rev, you have anything else to add?
Um Not really. Just, if you
Okay,
haven't been in the game for a while, this is a good opportunity to get back in ahead of
fantastic time.
3.23. Uh, I don't think we're going to get the jump point in 3.23. Obviously, we're not going to
Not at
get
all.
Pyro in 3.23, but a lot of new stuff coming in that patch. Um, I can tell you on some of the Facebook groups, there's some guys who are just adamant that after 3.23 is 4.0 and 4.0 is coming this year. I think they're idiots. I don't. I think they're like overly optimistic. I think I might have actually predicted that will happen too, but I mean, tongue in cheek, right? Do I believe it's absolutely 100% 4.0 this year? No, no. I think there's going to be a 3.24. I think that's going to
I
have the
think there's
vast
going to be a
majority of additional stuff.
324. I think there will be a 324. I
I,
do
I,
think.
I would not be surprised if there isn't a 3.25. That
Yeah,
would
I think
not surprise me.
I do think we're going to get 4.0 this year. I think it's going to be a CitizenCon release. Um, or that Q3 patch. I think is when we're going to get it. Um,
Mm, yeah, I think we need to stop thinking about these releases right now as quarterly releases because they're not going to be. With the
that's
amount of
true. We're
the
this is
amount
this
of
is
stuff
a
that's being
strange time in Star Citizen right
yeah,
now.
but with the amount of information and of like features and stuff being pushed in, uh, two maybe three patches this year, three if we go to 4.0, two if it's just 0.23 and 0.24. Um, 4.0 come CitizenCon, I guess. I mean, maybe that still feels a little ambitious to me. I think 4.0 next year.
That gives 7 months for them to get 4.0 presentable.
Right, right. So with all of the stuff that they're bringing in from Squadron 42 over the next couple of patches over the course of this year, I'm I don't know, maybe
Here's the thing: they talked a big game last year at CitizenCon.
they did.
For them to not have Pyro this year for CitizenCon. I mean, they decked out the venue in Pyro because they said Pyro's coming. This is it, right? They made a huge deal,
All right, good, fine.
right?
Just give me my address and we'll be good. That's fine. Then
I mean, here's the thing.
Pyro this year. That means Idris this year. Fine.
Yeah, even 2952, the theme was Road to Pyro, right? The Citizen called Road to Pyro, and then 2953 was, hey, Pyro's here, basically, right?
Well,
So
we do
if
we do
they,
see it. Obviously, we got people
yeah,
playing, testing in Pyro, jump in the jump gate. So, uh, to me, right now, the only reason that I'm even that skeptical is just from the sheer amount of things that they're trying to bring in to have that also be Pyro in 3.23, 3.24. It just feels like that might be the step too far.
Yeah, it's
as far
just
as
the
expectations.
the thing to consider, right, is that these things, these features that they're bringing in, that they are hammering into 323 and 324, they are squadron features primarily, which were worked on outside of Pyro, right? These are features that were completed for Squadron and are being ported over to the PU, so most of the work is already done.
Well, that's true, but when we're talking bringing Pyro in, we're talking about 4.0 coming in. We're talking 4.0 coming in.
Yes.
We're talking about all of these squadron features, right? So
Wait,
while it's
what?
true that Pyro isn't necessarily tied to the squadron features, I think that they're coming hand in hand. That
The only thing that is coming hand in hand, that we know is coming hand in hand with Pyro, is server meshing. Squadron features are not tied to 4.0 at all.
not all of them. That I think there
What
are.
do you think? What squadron features do you think are tied to 4.0?
Well, okay, so yeah, server meshing.
It's not a squadron
Yeah, I
feature.
know it's not a squadron feature. I wasn't saying what it was. I was just saying words.
Boats.
Boats. Boats. Okay, I don't know. I'm talking out my ass. Okay, this is my feeling, my impression, right?
Yeah,
So I don't keep track of the facts enough to speak facts. I'm
that's
sorry.
okay.
This is just
That's okay.
the feeling I'm getting from the things that I've seen and
That
heard.
that is that is okay. Squadron features, from what I've seen, are not tied to 4.0 at all. That's what we're getting in 323, probably 324, and beyond. We're probably going to continue to get more squadron features implemented into the game through 4.0 and Pyro, but they're certainly not dependent on it, right? And I think that most of these features are virtually done. They're just working on porting them to the PU. So I think that's why there's still such good progress being made on Pyro, because the work that it takes to take these squadron features and put them into PU is relatively minor comparatively. So I don't know. That's why I feel confident.
All right, cool.
Seems plausible to me, but I mean I am kind of an optimist when it comes to this stuff. So
Yeah. Well, I guess
I
we'll
will
find
admit
out.
that. I guess we'll find out. Anything else?
No, I think that we just about covered it.
Yeah, I think we did. So we've got Monday maneuvers going on right now in our Discord, discord.gg/pfcs. We have daily events now. Every single day we've got stuff going on. Um, and I think there's a dozen or more people hanging out right now. So we're playing every day, all the time. Come hang out. That's
Absolutely.
that's all I have to say. We do these. Just gonna also reiterate, we do these when we can. We used to have a schedule, but I've started working a different job now, and so my schedule is whack. So maybe we'll do another one of these this week. Maybe it'll be 2 weeks. We don't know,
Yep, we
but we'll keep you
appreciate
posted.
everybody that's dropped in and such short notice. We got 12 people in here right now. Thanks very much for showing up, and we look forward to seeing you all next time. Thanks.